welcome to Whispers of Hope. I am your host, Alice White. This show is about life and its struggles and how people have overcome these challenges to find hope and a more fulfilling life. This week, we've invited my granddaughter, Destiny Potter, to our program to discuss the loss of her mother and the journey down the wrong path that she took while she was trying to deal with the emotional roller coaster called grief. Thank you for joining us. Destiny, I want to welcome you to our show today, and we're here to talk about some struggles that you've had along the way involving grief and involving a lot of situations that happened in your life at a very early age. And I'll start off by saying that you were 3 years old when you came to live with Grandpa and myself, your grandparents. How did that all come about?
As far as I remember, I was still a baby. I don't remember much, but I remember just coming home to my grandparents' house, and I basically couldn't go back to my mom.
And you stayed. There were some drug issues and situations back then that Destiny came to live with us, and we've enjoyed every minute of it, to say the least. And at 4 years old, I had taken Destiny to get her joined up for Head Start program, which is absolutely amazing for a 4-year-old. And I was very fortunate to get her in to the program, had friends that helped me get her in this program. And at Head Start, they have a program that involves having your child go in for testing of all sorts. You have to have a physical. And so this is what I did. I took Destiny into the doctor for the physical, and the next day she was on the school bus, and I had received a call from the doctor's office stating that my granddaughter was full-blown diabetic and that I needed to get her to emergency at Mary Bridge Children's Hospital in Tacoma as soon as possible. And this began a lifelong journey with her with the type 1 diabetes, which is a very devastating disease, and it happens to people that you don't even have a reason or don't even know why, but it's just a part of life. And so Destiny, at 4 years old, you were diagnosed with diabetes, and you began having extensive shots around the clock practically just to keep you alive. And so we had you in custody for a couple of years, and your mom was in the scene a little bit. And at 5 years old, what happened that you remember so well?
5 years old, I remember my mother she disappeared off the planet. She said she'd be back for Christmas. She never came back. I'd be there by the door waiting by the window for hours on end. She never showed up.
And this went on week after week, month after month. So how long did you actually wait before you kind of finally gave up? Was it, I think, about a year, if I remember?
Yeah, I would say probably about a year. It was a while, but...
Destiny was sitting on my lap, I remember it very well, and she kept trying to call her mother and no answer. So consequently, what she did was she said, well, that's it. She put the phone down and she says, you're my new mom. And you'll hear her calling me mother to this day. So at 7 years old, a little bit further in your life's journey, you also had another devastating situation with your real father. What happened there, Destiny?
My father, he passed away. As far as I knew, it was from diabetes. He was type 1 as well. He got diagnosed at age 2.
Very young.
Yes.
And so did you have a close connection with him, or was it pretty distant most of the time?
As far as I remember, there wasn't much to remember, but it was close, for sure.
And so we just found out recently, as of about a month ago, that your father actually died of a drug overdose.
Yes.
Is that not true? Okay. And so at this point, you pretty much felt like you were, of course, abandoned. You have abandonment issues, which that's so prevalent with teenagers and children. And they have some very devastating effects from abandonment. Abandonment is not a good thing, because there's nothing worse than feeling you're abandoned by especially those that you love the most. And the hard part of this is that you can't reach out to them because you can't even get them on the phone. You can't talk to them because they're not coming to see you anymore. And it's never the child's fault.
No.
It's always a situation of people that are involved in, a lot of it's pharmaceutical drugs, sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's just, they just want to be left alone. And so what happens is this abandonment, these children, these kids, they take this as personal. Well, my mother doesn't love me, my father doesn't love me, what have I done wrong? And why is this happening to me? I see other kids with their parents and everybody's happy family, and I don't have that. And so they kind of turn inward sometimes, and you have to really pay attention to that abandonment issues. And there is counseling set up for all these issues with teenagers. We have some awesome situations that you can call, a lot of helps out there that you can call, a lot of societies that you can call to get help for children, teenagers as well. And so, Destiny, at this point, your mother, you hadn't seen her for a lot of years, but we both know that we did finally see her. How long was that?
It was about 12 years later when we accidentally ran into her.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually in her hometown, Ocean Shores.
And how did that all come about?
You were going to be doing a wedding.
Yes.
And I believe it was that day of the wedding.
Yes, it
correct?
was. Yes, it was.
We got up early, we had our McDonald's, went to the beach. We came back. We're gonna go to the thrift shop. We went there, they were closed, so we went back to the apartments. And we pulled up to throw our trash away. And all of a sudden, you and I hear, a screaming of mother. You turn around and you knew right away that it was Melody.
Yes, the voice of your daughter, you'll never forget that voice. And so at this point, here was your mother, my daughter, after 10 years of not having a phone call, and we always had the same address, we always had the same, the same phone numbers. And so we prayed for her all the time, though. We never gave up on her. We prayed for God's protection upon her. And birthdays, in fact, today is her birthday. And we actually every year would say happy birthday to her and pray for her peace on her life and that God would protect her. And so here we are after 10 years, this reunion in the parking lot. It was a day of celebration for us. And after that, we had 2 full years. Do you want to talk a little bit about the 2 full years that we had?
The 2 full years, they were nice, I will admit. Got to see my mom. I was very happy about that. I'm very glad that I got to spend the time with her when I did. But it was, we had our ups and downs, mother and daughter moments, of course.
And 10 years had elapsed, so there was a lot of changes.
Oh, yes.
A lot of changes.
I was more older, and she still thought I was little, which was very hard, but...
Yes. So at this point, 2 wonderful years, a lot of catching up. You could pick up the telephone and call Mom, and she could call you, and we spent a lot of good times together during that 2 years. And then 2 years ago, approximately, then what changed everything? What happened 2 years ago?
2 years ago, from December 1st, 2 years ago, it was tragic. Honestly, it was very shocking. I didn't know how to react to it. We just got to your work and we got a phone call from her boyfriend that she was dating. He was hysterical. I asked him what's wrong, and he insisted on talking to you. I didn't know why. I didn't know what was wrong. So I handed you the phone, and next thing I know is you basically collapsed to the floor. You broke down crying on your knees. I couldn't figure out what was wrong until I finally, after 5-10 minutes of you crying, you told me. I didn't know how to handle it. I went into complete shock mode. I felt like I wasn't a normal person, I guess I would say, because I didn't shed a tear at first.
And what exactly did he say when he made that phone call to us? Do you remember what he said to us?
She was lying on the bathroom floor.
And she was dead.
She was dead, yes.
And we didn't know why. We couldn't hardly believe it because, first of all, you get into almost a mode, it's not of denial, but you're in such shock that you really
you
can't
don't want to
quite believe
it.
that this, how could this be true? You know, you get a phone call, maybe someone's sick or in the hospital, but this was so final. And we couldn't get any answers for a few days until we found out from the detectives that, in fact, it was a heroin overdose. And to our knowledge, did we even think for a
No.
minute that she was into heroin or anything? She was beautiful and vivacious and full of life. And
I didn't know she was into the, heroin.
No.
I thought she was just
pharmaceuticals.
yes, thank you.
Yes, and that's what a lot of people do. And she was in a lot of pain. She had had a couple car accidents that put her in that situation where she was taking pharmaceuticals, and that's kind of what we knew was happening.
Right.
And there again, we prayed for her all the time, and we kept that relationship of love, because you can have faith for someone, but without love, there's no hope in that. You
Right.
have to have faith with love, because faith and love work hand in hand, as we know that. So at this point, that was 2 years ago, and everything changed. We worked through it. We've had a lot of counseling.
It was really hard considering, the night before she called me, 4 hours before she passed. I told her, we got into a huge argument.
Okay.
I told her, I hate you. If you died tomorrow or tonight, I would not even care. I wouldn't shed a tear, which obviously I shedded multiple tears.
But you didn't really mean that when you said it. You were just saying
No,
you
I
were
was
angry.
I was mad and angry, and I don't think before I speak once I'm in
Okay.
anger.
Okay.
And, it was 4 hours after that when she passed. We didn't know until the morning. And like I said, I went into complete shock. I was like, how? I didn't even say I love you, which, I see kids and their parents all the time, and I see them arguing and stuff, and I think about my mother and I and how it happened. Last words I said to her was, I hate you. It was very rough.
And we've gone through, it's a really amazing, it's a grief counseling program, and it's free to the public. It's called Grief Share. And I'm going to have guests on my show at a later date to actually share with what Grief Share is all about, because it's an opportunity for people to sit in an environment where you can talk about the loss of your loved one, because a lot of people are told that grieving is wrong, or crying, or get over it, or get over yourself. And it's hard for a person that's grieving to actually, the holidays are horrible because everybody's happy and merriment, and it's Christmas, and it's celebration, and it's gifts, and inside you're crushed. And so with you, Destiny, you had this journey with your life of absolute, you were crushed inside, you had a lot of guilt, which you've since came to terms with. I know you have through a lot of our Grief Share that we can talk about, that you have to forgive yourself.
Oh, yes.
You need to forgive yourself, because with your mother, my daughter, she didn't mean to die. People that have heroin overdoses, most generally, I would say 99% of them do not mean to die. And so at this point, your journey began with, how did you react to this when you really, this was all internal, and this wasn't really voiced in our home at all about how devastated you really were. So tell us about what happened after that, when you began to feel this like a rebellion towards life and not caring about anything.
Well, it started about almost 6 months after that. It was during summertime, right around my birthday, July. I just, I got into the wrong crowd of people that I thought were my friends, that I thought they cared about me, but in all honesty, they didn't care as much as they should have, is a good way to put it. I don't know, I started doing drugs, and I was drinking a lot more. I was sneaking out, going out and, doing the wrong things.
Can I ask you, as a teenager, and of course we've since talked about this a lot, but as a grandparent or a parent of a child or a teenager that's actually out there and has this access to drugs of every sort, is it hard to get drugs?
Absolutely not. If you know the right people,
okay.
it is absolutely easy. You got friends.
Okay.
Just make a phone call or a text message, and you know, let's hang out. And it happens like that. It's like, oh, hey, what you got in there? And it starts like that.
And so with that came the alcohol too.
Oh, yes.
That was easy to get.
You know, I was drinking down at the river, you know, getting high. And I didn't care. I thought I was having fun, but in all honesty, I was hurting myself and my family.
You hit it very well.
Oh, yeah. I didn't want you guys to know at all.
Nobody knew anything about it. And so this went on for quite a while. And then at kind of like what was happening was this went on and on and on. And kind of undetected. But what started happening in your health as a type 1 diabetic?
I was going into a lot of DKA, which DKA is diabetic ketone acidosis. Which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically, it is poison in the blood.
Okay.
Your liver starts shutting down, your kidneys. You're dying is what you're doing. You're killing yourself inside.
Is this the food intake that you're not quite getting enough insulin to cover that because you're just kind of off in your own little world and not really taking care of yourself, or just don't care to take care of yourself?
I didn't care to take care of myself. I didn't care if I died or not. You know, I was partying a lot. It was just, I didn't care anymore. My mother was dead, the one person I loved the most, and, you know, I felt very terrible, and I couldn't forgive myself for what I did, what I said to her. And it got overwhelming, and I was like, you know what, I'm done. And I started hanging out with the wrong crowd.
And you just said pretty much, I just don't care.
Yeah, I said, you know, I give up. So if I die, I don't care.
So after going through that, quite a bit of this going on, and may I add too that I love the police department, I love our sheriff's departments, but when I would realize in the morning that my granddaughter wasn't in her bed, I would call the police and they would say, well, if a child goes on their own, if they leave your house on their own and they're not actually missing, then there's really nothing we can do, and there's all this time you have to wait until they can really put them in as missing.
Yes.
And so pretty much Destiny on this last, the really bad venture that she took when she left, and basically what had happened, she had left the house and we had woke up probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and she was gone, and so she came back to get in the house, to sneak back in, and the door was locked. And so she just left and got involved with the wrong people again and wound up in the hospital.
What happened was, you know, I was drinking. It was July 6th this year. I was drinking and I had a friend over, and, you know, I took 2 6-packs of Mike's Hard Lemonade. I chugged them down and I didn't care, and I was smoking as well, marijuana. And, you know, I got a phone call that I have to get home. You know, it's 10 o'clock. You need to be here. Where are you? I came home at 10:30. My phone was taken away. My friend was there with me. And the people we were partying with, she called them on her phone, and they came out to the house up the road from my house. And we snuck out my window. We grabbed our stuff, snuck out the window, and I don't remember this. I don't remember coming into the door talking to you guys. I don't remember sneaking out, but I do remember we went to Walmart. And I called up one of my exes, and him and his family came and got me. I stayed there with them for about 12 hours. I was in such DKA that I had to go to the hospital, and on top of that, I had alcohol poisoning.
And so at this point, you're in the hospital, and we get the call that you're in the hospital and that you're in DKA. And at this point in time, CPS stepped in because of the severity of the alcohol and the drug situation, and pretty much what they told you was, you can't go home.
Yeah.
Because you're in custody now, and that's, you know, it's for your protection and to try to sort this out and figure this out, which of course it all did get sorted out and it all did get figured out. But at that point, you came to terms with saying, you know, I've been harboring all this grief, and I've been trying to absolutely satisfy that longing and that hurtfulness in my heart from the loss of my mother, which was absolutely not going to happen like that. It just made it worse.
Oh, yes.
So when you were released back into our custody and had gone through some extensive counseling, and you actually got so very, very radically blessed because you were transferred to a ranch.
Well, before you guys got custody of me, you know, I was in CPS. I went to a foster home. I had a foster mom. It was very hard. She had, I believe, 4 other kids with her. And, you know, it was a small house. I was scared to death, very scared. You know, I just wanted to go home. And it was very hard.
So you did get to go home, and then you were at this ranch with this darling lady, and I'm not going to say her name, but
Yes.
she absolutely took you under her arms, and we had open visitation. We had a lot of time to spend together, and it was right in our own hometown, which was great. And so I was able to pick you up on all this. And what happened through all this, sorting everything out, you had determined in your heart that you did not want the alcohol, you did not want the drugs, because it was not taking care of this grief.
Exactly. It was, I will admit, the ranch. That's what we call it. It was such a miracle and a blessing. Honestly, I felt that the Lord put me there for a reason. I learned so much.
So if you were to tell anyone out there, basically all this, trying to stifle this grief inside, what would you tell them? That there's help out there and there is hope.
There is most definitely help out there. Just don't, I guess, be dumb like I was, and don't go to alcohol and drugs and hang out with the wrong people. It does not help at all. All you need is love and the good friends that are there for you, that will be your shoulder.
And you need to forgive yourself
Oh
above
yes,
all.
most definitely you have to forgive
Above all.
yourself,
And to
no
try to
matter what.
And you want to remember your loved one as they were. And we talk about your mom, my daughter, all the time, just like she is still a very real part of our lives.
Oh yes, you know, and it may sound weird, but you know, I talk to her. I'm like, you know, how's your day? Basically, it's nice.
And so if you were to sum it all kind of up in, it's kind of hard in just a terminology, but just to say, you need to have hope.
Oh yes, most
And
definitely.
you need to keep your faith.
Oh yes, you know, and I lost that during the way as well, but
So
I
pretty much
regained it.
you were just kind of, everything was on rejection.
Oh yeah, everything was up in the air, and I didn't care.
And so this was, all of this came about because of grief. You'd lost a father, you had lost a mother, and
yes.
you had lost them to abandonment years before they both passed away,
Oh yes.
which was very sad in itself. But you still had to deal with the grief issue that this was final,
Oh yes,
that
for
this
sure.
was final. And I believe that you have been a real blessing to other people because you're able to share what you've gone through with, there's teenagers out there that are going through the same thing, and maybe they don't have the grief, maybe they have other issues, maybe, you know, it's a lot of bullying going around. There's
Oh, yes.
a lot of drugs out there that are just there for the taking at any time, place, or situation.
Oh, yeah.
And so what would you say? It's not worth it, is it?
No, it may seem like it's totally worth it at first, but in all reality, it's really not. You may think, oh yeah, I can do it, you know, this is gonna help me, I don't care. Forget it all, I'm just gonna let loose. Don't let loose, because it is, for me, it was the worst thing that I could have ever done. I didn't think about my consequences or the people around me, but I was hurting you and my family, and I didn't realize it. I really didn't, but don't go down that road. It's not worth it at all.
No, it's not. And so seek the help that's out there. There are some good helps out there. There's a lot of crisis clinics for teenagers, children, and there's no age difference. They don't care how old you are. If you call these crisis lines and just say, you know, I need some help, because there are helps out there. And pretty much, too, with everything said and done, with all this damage from DKA,
Oh, yeah.
the last doctor's report from the frappologist was
once I was in the hospital, they told me, I have kidney disease and that I wouldn't be able to have a family in the near future. But I went to the frapologist.
Frapologist,
Very
yes.
hard word, but
Yes.
I went there and they said I basically had perfect kidneys.
Yes, kidney specialist gave you a clean
Yes.
bill of health, and so we take that as that's great. It's a second chance.
Oh,
in a
yes,
sense. And so,
I was very happy.
and now you're doing great. We're pretty much on a really great track right now, and I love being with you. You've been with me since you were 3 years old. You're closer than a daughter, and we've had a few struggles, but we've had a lot of great times, and there's a lot of great times ahead. So
Oh, yes.
we'll say that we need to keep our focus on focus on the now. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's out of sight.
Exactly.
And you have to remain.
One of my good sayings is don't worry about tomorrow or what's going to happen in the future. Just worry about it when it happens.
That's
Because
right.
you're just going to worry yourself till nothing, for nothing.
Well, Destiny, I can't thank you enough for coming on our show today. You've been a real pleasure, and you're my granddaughter, but you're also a good friend, and you absolutely shared with some people today that I think are going to help someone somewhere along their way. And so we need to remember that there's always hope.
Oh, yes.
Never give up.
No.
Don't try to take matters in your own hands because,
Most definitely not.
yes, that's right. If you would like more information on Whispers of Hope, or if you would like to share your story on our program, please see the contact information at the end of this video. You can also follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you again for joining us. Goodbye.